all of this is about is a Scotsman, Adam Smith. In 1776, he suggested that the division of labour in society was rather important. So it's not down to you to solve energy problems. It's down to trained engineers, to the energy sector, to the governments representing the social wealth of society. Will they do it? No, not much is the evidence, given what's been happening to the West in the last 20 or 30 years. Should they do it? Yes, they should. Therefore, we titled the book Energise to try to energise people like you, not to install a dung-driven, methane-powered hamster in your basement, but rather to lobby for, fight for, demonstrate for, write for, argue for, analyse what is needed to keep the lights on, and why the third world especially needs that. And that means those problems are solved at a collective level by experts, terrible men in white coats. Can you imagine how awful? But if it's keeping the lights on, I'm prepared to make a concession to that. So division of labour is important. What we've got instead today is a bad version of what Thorsten Veblen in 1899, in his Theory of the Leisure Class, put forward conspicuous consumption, except now it's conspicuous non-consumption. Right? I got here by pedalling a monocycle, you know, and I'm going to do a London marathon to get home to Putney. And you know, Veblen, at least, if you read his books, he incorporated technological development into his theory of American economy. Right? And he wasn't just talking about consumption, he also talked about production and new technology and so on. I don't agree with JFK. JFK, John Kennedy, invaded Vietnam, invaded Cuba, and did all sorts of other things which we needn't discuss until we're in the pub. But one thing he did, even though it was military, was he did set an ambition for America, which I think is the kind of thing that we need to think about. I'll read it out because it's so great. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade, great cadence and repetition, and do the other things. I like that colloquial thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organise and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. Now, you and I can discuss the space race. If you go to my website, you'll find a big article about it. Of course, we all know that nobody did land on the moon. It was all got up by Hollywood. But who today, among politicians, says we're going to do something because it's hard, not because it's easy? Right? Nobody says that. And you know, you need the R&D budgets, you need the skilled engineers, and you also need something that will inspire people to go the extra mile. And you need confidence in human achievements, and you need leaders. None of these things are very popular now, but with your help, I think they can be. Do have a look at that, especially if you can spell it. It took me 7 years to learn how to spell that. And you've been very patient. Over to you. Thank you.
There is an agenda. Yeah, don't you think that is precisely why there is not enough money spent in research and development for innovation and alternative fuels?
Good question. Can I have the next one, please? No, it's all right. Just being a politician. I'll come straight. I like to take 2 or 3 and then come.
Okay,
Yes.
I will visit website A Life After Oil Crash. Did you visit website?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Okay, come back to that. Very good. Yes.
Yes, you've described how the East, China, India are putting all this money into the industries. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, which of these, the solar, the wind, or the nuclear, is the most promising and the one they put the most money into?
Very good. Okay. Well, I think you raise an important point about R&D, but I think I think today we've got to be careful to have the widest and deepest explanation of this kind of non-leadership that we can get. I think one of the problems that we face today is that there's a certain amount in official circles of what I like to call GCSE Marxism, which says that everything has an economic foundation and that you can reduce my views or even Greenpeace's views to who's funding me or them, and you know, that everything must be reduced to economics. I don't think that's very proper to the spirit of Marx, as it happens, and I think it's something that when we're looking at the failure of Exxon, for example, to do R&D, or we're looking at General Motors and the film, which you may know, Who Killed the Electric Car, which I've reviewed that film on my website. It's very easy to say, well look, they would do that, wouldn't they? They don't want any alternative to oil. They don't want electric cars. They don't want nuclear power. They don't want all of these things. I think that isn't the whole story by any means. I put it to you that when Shell was targeted by Greenpeace during the Brent Spar affair in 1995, its petrol stations were firebombed and the kids of Shell executives were harassed in schools. And I think that's a key generational moment where 40-somethings felt that they could not go on in the old way, otherwise their kids would not talk to them. And I think what's underneath all of this is a lot of self-loathing in the West and a lot of risk aversion, which you cannot just reduce to economic things. They don't feel good about what they've done. They don't feel good about what they've done to the planet. They can see social decay in the American inner city. And I gave a talk recently in Frankfurt to lots of car engineers, and the chief of Shell R&D, who witnessed a talk like this, said, everything that you've said about R&D is complete rubbish. It never achieves anything. We are exhausting 8 planets worth of Earth at the moment, and R&D will not fix it. This is the head of Shell R&D. So you've got to wonder, you know, is it all dollars and cents that he's thinking, oh, I'm not going to spend any money on R&D, you know, we'll save the money for profits and I'll be a greedy banker and take a bonus and all of that stuff? Or is there a zeitgeist out there that says, I feel bad about myself, I feel bad about the West, I don't have an enemy anymore in the Soviet Union, the real enemy I have is myself, and that's why I'm going to Afghanistan to kind of fight myself, you know, which is really the only reason why all the other reasons adduced are not very convincing. So I think there's a cultural, a historical, political thing here, and we have, you know, so the task is not to just increase the budgets, but rather to rehabilitate leadership, human achievement, willpower, collective action, and these sorts of things. I'm sure there's some economic motive in there, but I don't think it's the whole deal. You know, it's important that we understand how deep the problem goes. Now, if you hang on, I've got 2 more to deal with, guys, because I've got to be polite here. Life after the oil crash is featured in the film A Crude Awakening, which you may have seen. And the guy who runs that website is a survivalist. He has piles of water stacked up behind him because he's waiting for, you know, Armageddon and, you know, a world in which nobody will be able to drive anymore because we'll have run out of oil because we're in peak oil. In the book, we go into the founder of peak oil, who's a terrific, I can pass the book to him. His name is a Shell economist in 1956 called Marion King Hubbard. And we especially put that picture in because he's about to take off in the Cold War. And he was quite a clever guy. He got some of his predictions right, but the enthusiasm that is held today for Hubbard cannot be attributed to the truthfulness of peak oil. There is a finite resource with oil, no doubt of that. Exactly how finite is very hard to understand, to get to the bottom of. It's likely that, and we go into it in some detail, it's likely that there's a lot more oil available in different places than people imagine. The most consistent critic of what's going on in the oil industry is Matthew Simmons, who you may know, who wrote Twilight of the Desert. And he says, look, how could we